Hello, my name is Amy Cisse, and today's tech update is all about M365 licenses and some of the features that you can have available, especially if you are a small business or if you're a startup. We had a client that reached out to us this week, and they wanted to know more about Office 365 licenses. And just a high level overview was just the need to have information be secure. They were very concerned about getting hacked. They were a startup where they communicated with other organizations and they were sharing PII, such as social security numbers. And they wanted to make sure that the emails were secure. They felt like they were getting some targeted malicious emails sent to them, and they wanted to make sure that they did not have any exposure to any attacks. They wanted to be more protected by using Microsoft 365 versus the email service that they were currently using. And so just a high level overview of the services that we offered to them was, of course, the licenses. We could start off with standard or premium. I like to give people options of what they can choose from to see what's a good fit for them. And of course, that email migration piece. Licenses comes with all this software. You have all these options for different apps, and you have, of course, if we do the email migration, that means it's going to come with Outlook so that users can interact with their mailbox, calendar, and Outlook as well. It's going to come with all of the Office products, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, other apps inside of Microsoft 365, such as Forms, and a digital notebook called OneNote. And if they, later on down the road wanted to have an intranet portal, they can certainly use SharePoint for collaboration. And they could even start using Teams now for scheduling meetings and sharing files and storing their, maybe meeting notes and just collaborating a bit more internally and also externally using Teams. OneDrive, we always recommend that for personal storage for files. They can also use Power Automate as their company grows if they wanted to automate some business processes. And I like that MileIQ is automatically included. Of course, if you're driving around, you have to track your mileage. It's very easy to report that information and send it over to your bookkeeper. Bookings, of course, is a scheduling tool. And I always say Planner is for managing tasks for groups of people, and To Do is your personal task management. So again, if you wanted to install Office products on your devices, you can certainly do so. And it's included in the license. Premium gives you much more features. So if you wanted to, of course, control users and groups. So if you wanted to say, for example, have an all staff group that you send a message to everyone in the organization, you can certainly do that with Azure Active Directory. And of course, if you wanted to control, do passwords have to have a certain length or a certain criteria. If they expire every 90 days, we can control that in Azure. And then, how do people authenticate? Is it that they just enter in their passwords? Are they also, getting a 6-digit code that gets sent to their mobile devices? Or are they using an app called Authenticator to approve the requests for the second layer of protection? And you also have some reports around security and usage. So say, for example, if you kind of wanted to take a look at some of the login traffic, what are the IP addresses, just make sure the accounts are not being compromised. You can certainly look up that information, and you will have some detections on, if certain criteria happens, such as, someone has downloaded 5,000 files, from a SharePoint site. It could email the admins and let them know this might be some potentially risky behavior. Or maybe it's your accountant who is downloading the tax documents or expense documents that you've uploaded for them to access, but at least you'll get a notification and it'll warn you if something is malicious or not for you to determine. So you have lots of different options to choose from as you needed to, of course, configure Active Directory for your organization. And there's also Azure Information Protection. So if you wanted to kind of, give people prompts, or even if the admins wanted to control, if this document or if this email might have some data that shouldn't go out the organization. So these labels are going to detect, the information that might be leaving the organization. And these labels, using Azure Information Protection in conjunction with Azure Rights Management, is going to then do that second layer of protection where we can establish policies and we can actually do the prevention, like encrypting the information or making sure that if you say no social security numbers within a document can go out the organization, it'll block it from happening. So there's lots of criteria to choose from, lots of templates that Microsoft already provides. And you can, of course, determine based on your compliance needs for your industry that you might be in, how you configure Azure Rights Management to control data from either staying within the organization as it's supposed to, or making sure that people who are interacting with the data internally are doing the things that they're supposed to do based on your organization's policies. And with the premium license, you can also have mobile device management. So think of it as an organization who is going to let people bring their own devices, and they can enroll this device to have the company's policies applied. And, maybe you're thinking, well, only large organizations do this, but again, you could do this as a small business as well. And essentially, what's great about mobile device management is, if someone says, I lost my cell phone, well, your company's data is not just kind of out in the wild somewhere. You can decide to wipe that device clean, and it'll remove all of the company's organizational data off of that device, which is really nice. And you also have options for, of course, you control the filtering for the emails that are maybe malicious. And what I like a lot is that it's going to do some proactive protections for you, such as if the links in the email might be malicious, it's not going to load those images, or it's not going to load those links for you. It's going to kind of block it. And, you can train the system to kind of, understand what your preferences are, which is really nice, because it learns through how you apply different policies and how you interact with those types of messages that you might receive to prevent them from coming through. And last but not least, for this effort, one of the things that we also offered was, as far as high-level migration from another mail provider to something like Microsoft 365, it's just, first and foremost, we would look at the domain, right? And we would say, where's your domain currently registered? And the interesting thing is that people sometimes will say, oh, it's registered through G Suite. And usually what happens is that either they might have set it up to purchase the domain, but the domain is probably really registered at like GoDaddy or a HostGator or some other registrar. And so we will look that up, and then we will look at the MX records and point that traffic to Office 365. Usually there's some downtime for DNS to finish propagating those record changes. And then we would configure the domain in 365. And of course, when the domain is available, we would then set up the user accounts, right? So is it that you're going to have, an account for each user? You're going to have like a generic mailbox. Maybe there's like an info at your company name or a contact at your company name, and then we could add various users to receive those messages. And sometimes what we'll do is if we set up teams and we have a generic phone number, then for the company, then we might even set up a mailbox for people to receive like the voice messages that come through and have most people managing the mailbox. And then we would, of course, set up the accounts, and then we would migrate the email. And of course, we would always do our checks and balances and make sure everything looks good after we set up. And we would set up the Outlook apps, whether it's on the desktop, whether it's on the phone. And we would do another final quality check with the client to make sure that they are good to go. And so those are some of the things that you can kind of think about to start using Microsoft 365. So even if you're a small company and you're interested, you can certainly start off with a low level of Microsoft 365 licenses and see what's going to be a good fit for you. Even at the lowest level, you're going to have some level of protections because, again, Microsoft invests lots of money in security, and it's certainly a great investment to kind of just explore as a small company to see what's going to be a good fit for you. And I'm always open to answering any questions people might have if they're curious about using Microsoft 365. So feel free to reach out, csaitsolutions.com, and we are on LinkedIn and also on Twitter. Until next time.